So this one is going to be an interesting one. It says US-China summit closes with war of words. Okay, I'm curious. I want to hear the war in words. Let's see what they had to say.
But we begin with the signs of progress and the fallout from President Biden's high-stakes summit with Chinese President Xi. The first face-to-face sit-down between the two leaders in more than a year. President Biden emerging from the meeting, describing it as one of the most productive discussions they've had, but then just...
Productive? I thought they're saying war of words. Yeah, and also it seems they've made it pretty clear that they're not fond of each other.
Emerging from the meeting, describing it as one of the most productive discussions they've had, but then just moments later, this happened.
After today, would you still refer to President Xi as a dictator? This is a term that you used earlier this year.
Good question.
He is. I mean, he's a dictator in the sense that he is a guy who runs a country that is a communist country that is based on a form of government totally different than ours.
And that's the reaction from Secretary of State Antony Blinken, appearing to wince a little bit there after you heard President Biden call Xi a dictator in response to a shouted question. ABC News Chief White House Correspondent Mary Bruce is traveling.
Wait, can you really make something out of that? What if the man was just reacting to how he was feeling internally? Maybe he had like a slight migraine at that point. So it's like, it happens, right? He was stressed at that point and then he reacted. How can you make, I don't know. I'm not making excuses, but let's see. Let's take it back again. Because these days, the media is making things out of nothing.
Antony Blinken appearing to wince a little bit there after you heard President Biden call Xi a dictator in response to a shouted question. ABC News Chief White House Correspondent Mary Bruce is traveling with the president and joins us from San Francisco. Mary, I want to start out. What were kind of the deliverables? What came out of this meeting, and has there been any fallout from President Biden's comments reaffirming that Xi is a dictator?
Yeah, Elizabeth, certainly not something that China was hoping to hear, that's for sure. They have been pushing back pretty strongly against that comment, calling it extremely wrong and irresponsible, though it is something that the president has said before. And, as you heard him there, he was pretty matter-of-fact about this. Yes, he is a dictator. He is the leader of a communist country. But the White House, while it may not be the ending they were hoping to yesterday's historic...
There's something I never understand. I'm sorry, but I'll take the video back. But there's something I never understand. Do they just go to the back of, I don't know, like a scene, and then they like start or action, and then they just start working out? Like, what are they doing? How did they get here? Where are they going to? Or are they just having like buddy relationship or a nice conversation between themselves? I have a lot of questions, because why are they just working together like that after they've been attacking each other?
Before, and as you heard him there, he was pretty matter-of-fact about this. Yes, he is a dictator. He is the leader of a communist country.
See?
But the White House, while it may not be the ending they were hoping to yesterday's historic day, this historic meeting between President Biden and President Xi, they don't think it's going to derail any of the progress made or undermine any of the strides they were able to achieve here. It is also worth noting that the Chinese, in responding to this, have said, some people are always trying to drive a wedge between the U.S. and China. They seem to be taking more issue with the question rather than the answer. And they were, though, able to make what the president has called important progress. Two main issues stick out here, Elizabeth. The first being fentanyl, promising to take steps to try and curb the flow of fentanyl into the U.S., to try and tamp down and clamp down on the production of the compounds that actually go into making fentanyl, which are produced in China. And I think this is one of those deliverables from a summit that really resonates with a lot of people here in the U.S. Hundreds of thousands of Americans have lost their lives because of this deadly drug. And it goes to show that these summits aren't just about lofty...
Canadians too is really coming into Canada now. You need to see East Hastings in Canada.
...diplomatic goals. The other big thing, which is what the White House was really hoping to walk away from this summit with, is a promise to reopen military-to-military communication. Those ties were severed last year after then House Speaker Nancy Pelosi visited Taiwan, something that deeply frustrated and irritated the Chinese. Now they are promising to speak again, and that is a very big deal. The goal here, of course, is that it will prevent any misunderstandings, any miscommunication from escalating into a future conflict. The president saying he looks forward to now simply being able to pick up the phone and talk to President Xi going forward, and for their administrations to be able to have that open line of communication as well, Elizabeth.
Big areas of agreement there, Marian. And I'm curious, what has there been any follow-up kind of in the past day between the U.S. and China, and how they will actually follow through after this high-stakes meeting is over now on those agreements?
Yeah, well, the fact that they are now going to be able to pick up the phone is certainly a very big step. And look, President Biden and President Xi, they have had a decades-long relationship, something President Biden mentioned yesterday several times, though yesterday was the first time that they had talked, not just sat down, but talked in over a year. It comes, of course, as we know that the U.S.-China relationship has been growing increasingly tense, and the president is trying to hammer home this message that they can be competitors, but that competition doesn't always have to lead into conflict. So the President Biden is hoping that at least sitting down, talking face-to-face, leader to leader yesterday, that level of diplomacy is now opening up the door for them to continue that conversation. And as President Xi argued yesterday, there is room in the world for both of these superpowers.
So the question now is, where does this put the relationship between China and Russia? Yeah, or are they all going to cooperate now? I mean, it's going to be a good thing if China, Russia, USA, everybody can just work together. But that might not always be the case. So where is it going to be? Where does this put Russia, China, and USA? Like, how do you place three of them now?
And Mary, with all of this kind of going on, as we are seeing, the president faced a lot of questions from the crisis in the Middle East last night. How is he balancing these competing huge foreign policy goals as he's continuing these meetings over there in San Francisco?
Yeah, obviously a lot on President Biden's plate right now. And it was interesting at the press conference last night, he fielded, I think an equal amount of questions on the meeting with President Xi as he did about what is unfolding in the Middle East and in Gaza. And I think what's interesting is how this actually came up in the president's meeting with President Xi. We know that he urged President Xi to use his influence over Iran to make it clear that Tehran and Tehran's proxies should not try and take advantage of this crisis, should not try to widen this war, and should stop attacking U.S. forces in the region. Now, we pressed the White House about this morning, and they didn't want to go into details about how that conversation went. So the bottom line here is it's unclear, what exactly was conveyed when it comes to Xi's role in this unfolding crisis, and whether the Chinese received the message, Elizabeth.
Mary Bruce, traveling with the president. Mary, thanks so much. Now let's bring the big story to our panel. Joining us today, ABC News contributor and Sirius XM radio host Mike Muse, ABC News contributor and former Republican Virginia Congresswoman Barbara Comstock, Democratic strategist and president of Next Gen America Cristina Simpson Ramirez, and ABC News legal and defense analyst and former Deputy Assistant Secretary for Defense for the Middle East, Mick Mulroy. Cristina, I'm going to start with you, picking up on some of the political implications of what Mary was just talking about there. Did President Biden undermine some of his successes that he's seeing with the agreements with President Xi and on this foreign policy stage when he makes offhanded comments like that, calling President Xi a dictator?
Well, we don't really fully know whether it was offhand, intended, or what it was, but what is good...
It was intended, right? Because he was asked, and then he emphasized and even further explained that he runs a communist state, and that makes him a dictator. That's what he said in the video we just saw. So that would mean it was intended, right? And also, he could have taken back his words if it wasn't intended. If I make a mistake in a video like this, I can say, oh, I mean, or I can change it, or, rephrase or something. But he didn't seem to have done that.
Is that China said out of the meeting that they didn't want a wedge to be driven between the United States. There were really, really important things that came out of this meeting. Not just the fentanyl, being able to really close down that supply chain when we had 73,000 people die in the United States last year from fentanyl overdoses, but also a effort to and promise to pursue efforts to triple renewable energy capacity globally by 2030 to tackle climate change. So we need what came out of this meeting to continue to move forward. And I think there are signs that that is going to happen, because it is not just about a comment. It's about these really critical issues that matter to Americans, the Chinese, and globally.
And I do want to get to some of those issues, but Barbara, I just want to go to you. I mean, isn't there some truth to what President Biden said when it comes to the kind of regime that China and President Xi oversees?
Exactly. I thought it was great that he said it, and he said it before, unlike Donald Trump, who, says he's a strong man and he admires that. And China itself proved that President Biden was right when they censored that comment and didn't allow it to be in the press. So I think you have to come at China from a position of strength. So it's good that he said that, while also working with them. I mean, right now, the U.S. economy is growing faster than China's, and you have many of our companies doing less business in China. Many of our allies are doing less business in China. Many companies are, bringing, business back here, because of the concern post-COVID. It's a different world.
Can they really bring all the business back there? Cost of production, can they keep up?
COVID. So I think, we should
We'll
be
see.
approaching China, making sure we have good relationships, but also with an understanding that, we don't have to necessarily trust them. And we also understand that this is a dictator we're dealing with, and we can't always, take their word at face value.
Trust but verify, as President Biden said. Mick, I want to go to you. How significant are some of these agreements that Mary was touching on, this reestablishment of military-to-military communications between the U.S. and China? What does that actually mean in practice?
So, Elizabeth, that is actually much more important than it might sound. Two militaries that are operating in the same space, whether it's air or maritime, right around the Chinese area, can really have problems, especially with the provocative actions the Chinese have been taking for many years now. If they don't have the ability to talk, some of those actions could be taken the wrong way and potentially lead to an escalation that neither country wants. So this is very important. It was the one thing I think they really wanted out of this summit, and it looks like they got it. We have to see that going ahead, but they agreed to it, and I think that's very important.
One of the other things, Mike Muse, that Mary mentioned was this agreement over trying to curb the production, the use of fentanyl. How do you think that plays politically, Mike?
I think politically it plays really well. I mean, we really have to look at, in terms of what President Xi said, was that they will look at regulating the components of the manufacturing of the chemical companies that make actual fentanyl, which is actually a really great first step in the supply chain. And then the second step that we saw President Xi in conversation with the president of Mexico, in conversation about how those two countries can work together to curb the access of fentanyl into Mexico, and working with and to curb the amount that gets to the drug cartels that comes up to the United States. And so then to have President Biden double down on that aspect of it and really hold them to their word, as you said, trust but verify, that dynamic when it comes to that. I think that's a really important political dynamic statement, and President Biden was really bold and strong when it came to that.
We'll see.
Much more to discuss. Thanks so much to Mike, Barbara, Christina, and Mick.
Yeah, it was just one meeting. We shouldn't be too excited yet. Let's see the work. Because it seems like the first step they've taken is to at least pick the call first when I call. That's basically what they've said. Yeah, when I call, you just pick the call first. So we're not sure if these things are going to be done until we see it. Because I'm used to, at this point in time, I'm Nigerian. And what I see a lot, I'm not speaking about America right now, I'm speaking from my country. What I see a lot is politicians coming on to tell us a bunch of things they are going to do and what deals they've initiated. But for some reason, those deals never follow through. It's like magic, right? So until we start seeing the work, and we'll just take it as just words for now. Anyways, let me know what you think about that. It was an interesting video. I'll put the link to the original in the description in case you want to go check them out. But feel free to share your thoughts, smash the like button, subscribe, and I'll see you on the next video. Peace.